Hey everybody, it's Eric live alongside Rod to talk about MSU's latest recruiting commitment to the 2026-27 class, Ethan Taylor. If you're watching us now, please drop in the comments where you're watching from and feel free to ask questions. Super chat is open. I'll continue to try and get live streaming on Instagram to work, but no promises because it's kind of buggy. So, all right, Rod. So the washed up Tom Izzo managed to land his fourth target of the high school recruiting season, a measly 5-star, number 2 rated center in the country. Taylor must have gotten the wrong directions or something on his recruiting trip. And instead of ending up in West Lafayette, he ends up in East Lansing.
Yeah.
Because he's 7 foot, 1.5 inches, apparently still growing potentially.
That's what they say. Yes. That was interesting. An interesting newsy item that came out of that press conference is that they say he's still growing and he's just recently measured at 7'1.5". So you're right. And I had that exact same thought. Like, okay, we finally got a guy who is going to be able to look Purdue centers in the eye directly.
Right.
And that's news.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing is, so he has a wingspan that exceeds 7'1", which is what he was listed before. He's going to play senior year of high school with Carlos Medlock, a junior who is the first commitment to point guard for Michigan State. The Link Academy, it's I'm not sure where it is in Missouri. I assume it's St. Louis area, but I have really no idea.
I think it's Branson, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think
Country
so.
Music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Ethan Taylor. For once, we were talking off camera, but it was a very quick announcement. It was so quick, I didn't even have a chance to watch it. It was over before I could even pick up. So it started on time,
and it was
dance. Quick. No hat dance, exactly. So he's a consensus top 20 recruit. So that puts him a 5-star or verge of 5-star.
Well, consensus top 30.
Top 30. Okay. Yeah. All right. 240 pounds. So he's got some bulk to him too. He's not just a rail. He's originally actually from Kansas, and
Shawnee Mission,
wherever the heck that is.
I believe that's where the NCAA used to be headquartered before they moved to Indianapolis, if I remember correctly. I think so.
So a lot of peach baskets there or something, huh? Okay.
Right.
Yeah. He averaged 10 points a game, 8.3 rebounds a game, shot 60%, 68% from the line, 73% from the floor.
Yeah.
And averaged a block a game. So this is a guy who can score. He can play defense, obviously. And I was there on I was there during Midnight Madness, and he was visiting. So he wasn't there during Grind Week, but he's there Midnight Madness. And, the whole crowd started chanting his name. It was a lot of fun. And I know he experienced the camp out, which I know people are familiar with, where all the future Izzone members, they go out and they camp, outside on the Munn Field, which is the big, huge IM field that they have outside at Breslin Center. And they do a bunch of stuff. They have a stage set up. And I saw a video of him like crowd surfing, as they're carrying him across. So he clearly had a good time. I don't know if that really affects his decision much, but it certainly shows a level of commitment and interest from the fan base, which has got to be pretty nice for a high school kid.
Well, I think it helped solidify things. He mentioned it. I've seen some interview. There's a great tweet, actually, or post on X, whatever you want to call it, from Joe Tipton, who does a great job for On 3 and Rivals since they've merged in their basketball recruiting coverage. He had 4 photos in the post. 2 of them were photos of Ethan Taylor crowd surfing. And I had seen video too, but these are photos from above. So they give
like a drone shot,
maybe than you've seen. Just a huge human being crowd surfing. But there were also 2 photos that I thought were even better. And they were of he and Tom Izzo at Izzo's house making pizza with aprons and chef's hats on. So I think that might have been what sold them. But yeah, I had not seen those. Those were great photos. So thanks to Joe Tipton for getting a hold of those somehow and posting them. It was clear from the coverage and the things that Ethan Taylor said that his visit was knocked out of the park. And we talk about Grind Week as like the ultimate visit week for Michigan State. And I think in a lot of ways it is, because it puts those guys in a room with all the players who have been here before, the pros, the guys who aren't necessarily NBA players, but still can speak about the program in a way that's more meaningful than what anybody else can say, because they lived it. They went through it. But boy, Midnight Madness was a close second this year, because it really seemed obvious that they just connected with Ethan Taylor on that visit. It just, what the interest level was high anyway, but it, without being on the inside, I can't say this for sure, but it just seemed to me that that was what solidified it. That he came in and he could see the support that the community, the student body has for the program. He also got to spend a lot of time with the players. He mentioned that in his press conference today, announcing the decision, that was really big. Him getting to know the players, see them in their own environment, and understand a bit about how it is to actually be a Michigan State player. So it was a great job. And look, Michigan State, I don't know. Hopefully we're going to get a chance to interview him either this season or in the summer. But as we usually try to do with and we got 4 of them plus whoever they add in the portal, so it could be a long list this year.
Yeah,
but,
right. And Caleb Glenn, we never caught you last year. We'll have to probably talk to him too.
But that's right. But my sense was Michigan State was not chips all in with Ethan Taylor until this spring. I'm assuming they had some level of contact, but we've seen that with a lot of the guys. Julius Avant was a guy that they had been in touch with for much longer than I think anybody realized before they really ramped it up and decided to commit to him being a priority recruit. Now, with Ethan Taylor, part of what's gone on is that his ranking has really undergone something of a meteoric rise. He was like a back half top 100 guy until this spring. And the way he played for Mocan Elite, one of the great AAU programs in the country, helped him solidify being, a top 30-ish kind of guy. And even though his ranking isn't top 10, top 15, I think the fact that he's the second ranked center in America, it's a virtual lock that he'll be a McDonald's All-American. Sure. I think Josiah Jervis has a legit shot at that as well, but I'm a little more circumspect with him. Taylor, I'd be shocked if he's not in that game. So yeah, I mean, by all accounts, once Michigan State decided to get in, they went in full bore and overcame some programs that had been working. At least there had been more intensity earlier than MSU. Oklahoma was in very strongly on him early on. Indiana was in very strong with him from the moment Darren DeVries got that job. So their interest preceded Michigan State's by a bit. Kansas, as the home state school, was involved with him to varying degrees before MSU. But he mentioned once MSU got involved for real, Tom Izzo outworked everybody. He said he was constantly communicating with him. He developed a relationship with Ethan's mom and dad, which, again, none of these things are surprising to us. We know that's how it goes. But it's just interesting to hear a player confirm it. And I think all of those things probably played a big factor, as well as the appearance at this point that there's going to be a very legitimate opportunity for him to earn a major role as a freshman.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't know what the future holds in terms of eligibility rulings or the transfer portal or any of those. There's a lot that could happen. But right now, as it stands, the only guy who has center size that is slated to be back, again, right now, is Jesse McCulloch. So there's an opportunity for Ethan Taylor. And he's a talented enough kid that if everything breaks the right way, who knows? You wouldn't rule out his being a starter as a freshman. You'd be foolish to rule that out at this point. But we can talk as we keep talking, we can get into what he is and all of that.
Exactly. So, I mean, obviously, 7'1". He's going to be a rebounder. That's reminds me that we need to
Well,
talk about the squeegee squad at Grand Rapids, right?
yeah.
So, the squeegee squad cleaning the glass. They can clean your windows or your business or your home, whatever you need done in the greater Grand Rapids area. You head over to our support page at the Final Four is not the schedule.com/support. There you can find a link for Troy and his team. They can come out and take care of things. 15% off if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate. I've had them do my house, and I highly recommend them for anybody there. They're the nicest people, and they get things done quickly and efficiently. So as far as cleaning glass, I mean, the guy averages 8 boards a game. I never know exactly how to interpret these sometimes with high school because, or like or those are his AAU.
Those are his
Those are his
EYBL numbers. Yeah.
EYBL numbers, which is a little more impressive, I guess, because your competition can be a little bit better than
Yes.
potentially could be, in high school. Who knows who you're going up against?
But also keep in mind he's on a team with Reed, who was also a Michigan State recruit, who's also a post player. So
Right.
he's got real competition. And I didn't see any of Bocan's games this spring to see if those guys were out on the floor at the same time or if they were kind of sharing the position. But that should be either way, that should be kept in mind. And they're going to be doing that again, playing for Link. I would imagine the plan is to start them both for Link Academy. But, and I haven't seen the ESPN schedule of high school games this winter, but I've got to think Link is going to be in some of those games. So hopefully we're going to get an opportunity to watch him play. And of course, his point guard, Carlos Medlock, also part of this class. So it's definitely will be of major interest to Michigan State fans. But yeah, that definitely should be kept in mind in terms of his numbers. I wouldn't consider the raw numbers to be all that important. To me, the two things that stand out from those numbers is the crazy field goal percentage, which tells 70%. You this is a guy who knows who he is. He plays within himself, right? And I think also the fact that 68% at the line, not terrible.
No, that's
not
bad
for a 17-year-old high school big man. That suggests that there's room to work to get him even better as he continues on into his Michigan State career for however long that is. So yeah, really encouraging. But there are a lot of encouraging things about this guy. So let's start with the physical attributes. 7'1.5" from the horse's mouth today, 245 pounds. He doesn't look, when you see him, when you see video of him, he doesn't look, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. He doesn't look like a bruiser. And 245 on a 7'1.5" frame, he could carry more weight and be just fine.
Yeah.
And so I do think that's one thing that they'll probably look to do is add some good weight. But he's plenty big right now. Every account you read of him from recruiting service type people talks about how he's just a massive human being. And that truly does come across. If he's still growing, he gets to 7'2", 7'3". I mean, it is an accurate thing, I think, to state. Tom Izzo has never had a player like him.
Yeah.
He has never had a guy. He's had 7-footers. Tom Herzog was a 7-footer. Edon Ebach, I believe, measured 7 feet. I'm probably missing somebody. I guess Marcus Bingham was close, 6'11".
Cooper's close.
6'11".
He's like,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's had guys that were close, but he's never, I don't think he said Zappala was 7 feet, I think. But I don't think if this kid gets to, I mean, already at 7'1.5", he's probably, I think, the biggest who played for Izzo. And he plays big. When you watch the clips, this is a guy who likes playing in the post, and he likes physicality. He likes playing a physical game. So that's all going to work really, really well. And the development that he has to do with his body, I think the two things you would say right now, and they'd be true for almost any young big. One is continue to add some good weight. I mean, with his frame, he could carry 260 easy.
Sure.
And
still move fine, right? That's
right. The other thing would be conditioning. I have not seen enough of him to know this, but I suspect that he hasn't ever played the way Michigan State plays. And so with a young big man, that's going to be a question coming into a freshman season. And that might be as much of a limiter on the amount of minutes he plays as anything. Is as a freshman big man at Michigan State,
right?
How many minutes can you play at a high level? That's the key. And I would suspect that conditioning is going to be one of the things that they really go to work on. Not that he's, a disaster area in that respect, but just you would say that about any young big. It's an adjustment to play the way Michigan State wants to. I go back to that Arkansas game. Even guys like Jackson Kohler have been around for 4 years, sucking a little bit of wind at the end of that one. And that's not a knock on Jackson. That's just the kind of game it was. Yeah. And that's a guy who's been in it for years. So that'll be an adjustment for him to make. Offensively, we talked about the great field goal percentage. If you watch clips of him that are out there, you see why he was so highly touted and was wanted by so many major programs. He already has some nice footwork in place, some nice post moves. He's got a spin move on the block that looks really good to me. Is he going to need to do continued development in that area? Sure. But I think he's coming in with a little bit ahead of the curve from what you normally see from a young big in terms of post game. It looks to me. Got a nice jump hook I've seen some evidence of going over his left shoulder. And obviously his size is going to make him a weapon. The other thing that's interesting about him, very good hands. And he's already a guy that recruiting coverage talks about him as a lob threat. Well, imagine him getting past. I mean, we'll see how gifted Carlos Medlock is in that area, but there's a guy that's likely going to be playing point guard with him next year who's really good in that area out of the pick and roll. And so Michigan State might not miss a beat transitioning from Carson Cooper in that role to Ethan Taylor. I would think with his hands and his size, his length, he is going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with in pick and roll, provided that he could set picks well enough. That's the first part.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But, we'll hope that comes into play. I would say, other than the conditioning and continuing to add some good weight, probably the thing that you're going to wonder about and we won't have a good enough read on until we actually see it a year from now is how well he holds up as a freshman defensively. The word on him is he's got good mobility for a big kid, got good footwork. That's great. But that isn't enough in and of itself. So it's going to be about how quickly he transitions to the college game and to MSU's expectations for a 5-man in that role. That's going to help determine how big the role is early on as well. I would imagine he's going to be an effective rim protector. I think I read he's got 7'4", 7'5" wingspan to go with his height. He's going to be a presence in that way. But as we know at Michigan State, that's just the starting point. That's not the whole deal defensively. You got to be able to defend out on the floor. And so that's going to be the challenge. So I'm extremely excited about him. I think he's a player who's a little different than anybody Izzo's ever recruited. And yet you got to be careful with the expectations. And that's why I still think it's possible that Michigan State, if I had to pick a spot right now, and it's early, things can change. We know this. But if I had to pick a spot right now where I would say, okay, in the spring, are they going to add somebody? And if so, what position? My number one thought would be a big man with experience, not necessarily a 25-minute a night guy. You could conceivably look to add somebody like a Zapala, give you 10, 12 good minutes, experience, size, and then figure you will fill in the rest with higher level talent with Ethan Taylor and McCulloch. That's a possibility, but I think it would be asking a lot to say, hey, Ethan Taylor, here's 28 minutes a game as a freshman. We just don't see that typically at MSU for bigs. We see it at other positions occasionally, but not usually big men. And so for as talented as he is and the huge upside, figuratively and literally, that he has, it's probably wise to temper expectations a little bit, at least until we see how well does he make the transition. How much better can he improve his conditioning level? Can he continue to add good weight and strength? And then, of course, what kind of transition does he make defensively? Those will be the things that will tell the story for a freshman year. So I think with a kid with his size and potential, you can't ever rule out that he's a one and done. But I think it also remains to be seen whether that's what comes to fruition or if it's more of a 2 to 3 year plan.
Sure. Well, you can't ever know until you see him play.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
You got to see how the transition happens. And it's different for every guy. I mean, we've already seen it this year. What were the question marks about Jordan Scott? Everybody's take on Jordan Scott as well. He's a great shooter, really skilled kid. He's going to need time to get strong enough and to figure out how to play defense at this level. Well, the shooting we haven't seen yet. We will, but we haven't seen it yet. But he came in ready to go defensively and in terms of his strength, his toughness. So you never know.
Yeah, no, that's no question. And all we have is Moneyball. We're not in the practices. And if you're in the practices, it totally depends on what's happening on the floor during the game, right? That's where the rubber hits the road. So just a quick reminder that it's getting close to Christmas. If you're looking for something to get, go to Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. I'm wearing a super comfortable hoodie, which this is our Tiff Knots one. You can get this at the friends and the I can't even remember. It's at nudgeprinting.com. I can't remember the subheading it is. The URL, exactly. I can't remember exactly which one it is. It's pretty easy to figure out. It's like, I think, sponsors or something like that. So you can get our stuff there. Anything else at Nudge Printing, of course, as a listener to the show, head on over to nudgeprinting.com/win. And then you have an opportunity to get a free sweatshirt, a Tom frickin' Izzo hoodie. You've entered the drawing. We'll do the drawing before the North Carolina game, which is on Thanksgiving. So you may get that in time for the holidays, which you can keep or give it away to someone as a gift. And you don't have to buy anything. It's like the perfect gift.
I wish I had one of those last night after listening to that press conference. Woo! On fire.
He was an angry guy. So
he had every right to be.
Yeah, I know. We went through it last night. Yeah, he definitely had a lot of reasons to be upset and disappointed. And he gets far more upset earlier in the season than he does later in the season because he's got to keep these guys motivated. And there's so much. There's so far they have to get, so much better they have to get to where he wants them to be. Which is, I think every year he wants a title, and I don't think there's a reason to think this team could potentially get there. I mean, anything is possible at this point. Certainly didn't see an Elite Eight last year at the beginning of the season, and that's where they ended up. So head on over to Nudge Printing again. Absolutely make sure you do the entering, and you can also go to the subheading free on the Nudge website. There you can get some free wallpaper for your phone. A couple comments just came in. So one of them is, and I don't know the answer to this. Maybe you have an idea. So it's from Carson Thimke on X. Any MSU player comps? I don't know that we really ever know those things, right?
No.
So
I'm going back. I can go back to the Judd era, and there's none. If you think about first of all, Michigan State under Izzo especially has often played what I would call undersized centers. So if you think about guys that have played that position, Andre Hudson was technically the 5, right? 6'8". You think about Xavier Tillman, 6'8",
right?
They haven't always, or probably less often. Nick Ward when he was starting, 6'9". Matt Costello was 6'10". That's about where that 6'8" to 6'10" is normally about where Michigan State bigs slot in. And why is that? Well, one of the main reasons is at Michigan State, you've got to defend. And defending at Michigan State, does not mean stay within 5 feet of the rim and just look to get tall. That's not it,
Yeah.
And so some of the bigs, when you look at bigs, really big guys that he's recruited, you look at a Marcus Bingham, you look at a Tom Herzog going back a ways. Those were Drew Namick. Those were guys that could move. They
Yeah.
were athletic. Now, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. You know, you could see there's a difference in the careers those guys I just named had, but that really is going to determine it. So the fact that he was all in on Ethan Taylor tells you he believes he's got the mobility to handle the defensive end, at least once they've gotten their hands on him, you know?
Right. Right.
Because he doesn't recruit. He just typically does not recruit. Like, you know, we were joking about Purdue. They finally got somebody that, you know, can see eye to eye with the Purdue big men, right?
Right.
And that's true. It's funny, but almost all of the guys that Matt Painter has had at the 5, and this is not a knock on Matt Painter or those players, because obviously the program and the individuals have thrived. Not a one of them would have been a good fit at Michigan State. And I don't think, I'm trying to think, I don't think any of them had offers from Michigan State. The Purdue bigs that have had Michigan State offers were Caleb Swanigan, and Trevion Williams, who were 6'9" guys.
Mm-hmm.
Izzo's never gotten involved with any of the big men that they've had. And it's because they value different kinds of things.
Exactly.
You know, you don't have to have that mobility. You know, Matt Painter is not going to ask his 5-man to play hard hedges on pick and roll. He's going to play him in drop coverage. He's fine doing that. Okay. He's not going to ask him to run the floor constantly. He's not going to have him be a rim runner. Okay. But Ethan Taylor is that unique mix of a guy who physically can match up with those Purdue type centers. And yet they obviously believe he's got at least the potential, if he's not quite there yet, to handle the defensive workload that Michigan State has. So no, I can't. The other thing too would be, normally the guys who have had, because MSU's had guys who had good low post games offensively. Nick Ward was one in recent years. Derek Nix had that. Andre Hudson developed it. Zach Randolph, obviously a great example. What's the commonality between all those guys I just named? They're all about 6'9", 6'8", 6'9".
Right. Yeah.
They've never had, the few 7-foot plus guys they've had never had offensive potential like Ethan Taylor. So I don't think there's a good comp. That's a long-winded way of answering that question.
Yeah, someone actually, J.D. McKay, back up at the Cuban Peninsula, asked about Greg Kelser, and then he realized he's only 6'7", which surprised me.
You want a Greg Kelser comparison? Yeah.
Well, no, he was just thinking about for height. He thought he was taller. That's all he was just thinking.
No.
So,
that's
no,
7'1"
it's definitely
and a half versus 6'7".
Yeah, no, not even close. Yeah, I guess I would have guessed that Greg Kelser is tall too. I've never met him, so looks tall.
6'7", but with his athletic ability, I mean, Greg Kelser put up some huge rebounding totals. Yeah. So he played bigger than 6'7" would suggest, but no, he was not. That's another example. You go back to, going back to the Judd era. You know, the center on the national championship team in '79 was Jay Vincent. He was 6'8". He played small forward in the NBA. Right. So that team did not have anybody like that. Kevin Willis, who was a 7-footer, Kevin Willis did not have the offensive game that this kid has. Not in college. In the NBA, yeah, his offensive game developed. He was the black Kevin McHale in the NBA. Okay. Unbelievable low post. He used the glass better than anybody other than McHale that I've ever seen personally. But Kevin Willis didn't have that game when he was at MSU. He was an exceptional athlete who scored a lot of garbage points, scored some in transition. He was not really a great low post player at that point. So I can't even think of, I'm thinking Mike Peplowski was a legit big, but he wasn't like this guy. They're different players, you know? So no real good, obvious comparisons on the MSU level that come to my mind. I would say this. I want to bring back one thing I think I said in an earlier episode. And this comparison doesn't translate in terms of game at this point, like strengths and weaknesses. I'm speaking more to how they slot in as potential prospects. Reed was the other big man that really came down to for Michigan State before he opted to go to Mississippi State, and their high school teammates, as we mentioned. Reed, to me, a player I like a lot. I think had he ended up in Michigan State, Michigan State could have won games with him for sure, a lot of games. But to me, the difference is Reed looks to me like a guy who probably, if tops out, if everything goes really, really well, as kind of a Xavier Tillman type player.
Right.
He's about 6'8", 6'9". He's got great footwork, so could be an excellent defender right away. Does a lot of dirty work kind of things, but he's not necessarily a super skilled offensive player at this point. Ethan Taylor, again, different stylistically, but in terms of his upside, he would be more of the Jaren Jackson type prospect. Mm-hmm. So the difference is one guy could be a solid working man NBA player for a while. The other guy could be an all-star. So Michigan State got the upside guy of these two, for sure.
Well, if you want to get the upside guys, make sure you contact the Brothers Jesu Gutters. Those guys will take care of your gutters. And we all have them in the state of Michigan, whether you're on the east side or the west side. They can take care of it. They can clean them out. They can repair them, replace them, whatever needs to be done. They can put the leaf guards on so you don't have to clean them out anymore. So contact them today. You get 10% off. You mentioned Final Four at tffinots.com/support. All right, good question for Paul Siak. So car returns, natty favorites. What do you think? Do you think it makes a difference whether the car comes back or not?
Well, I mean, it's a little.
It's so early right now to try and guess, right?
We're still at the point where
is the season? Are we barely into the season?
That and some college basketball athlete or accounts and media types are starting out the process of identifying which guys are going to be important in the portal next year.
Right.
I've seriously seen that. There was a clip. I can't remember who did it. They just got a ton of heat, and rightly so. It was a Colorado game, and the person was talking about this guy's going to be great in the portal next spring. What?
Oh my gosh.
We're like 2-3 games in. Anyway, no, I can't say that. But do I think that Michigan? I think Michigan State's going to be very good next year, no matter what happens with Cohen. I've been prepared for him to be done.
Yep,
and I think the program is prepared for that. But look, you're going to give me a team that you start with Jeremy Fears at the point guard. I feel really good no matter who you're putting with him. Then you add in Cam Ward and Jordan Scott looking as advanced as they do right now.
Yep.
That says something to me. They're going to get Caleb Glenn back. That's something that could be kept in mind if you're hung up on the will he, won't he around Cohen Carr. They got another guy who's got a lot of potential, different player than Cohen, but a lot of potential who we're not even seeing this year, who can provide he could play the same kind of role positionally. And then you're adding these 4 freshmen, and then who knows who else might come in. So do I feel good about the future of Michigan State basketball in part because of these 4 guys they're bringing in? Absolutely.
Not bad for the Unk. Izzo, right? Yeah. So from Mr. Today, I'm tired. He has a good question too. So his question is, was Avery Booker supposed to be this Taylor kid at all?
No.
And I think
very different players.
Right. So, I mean, I remember us talking about that Booker moved well. He was definitely very, very skilled athletically, but he had definitely had like an outside shot, and he didn't spend all his time in the post. In fact, I don't think he spent any time in the post.
No, Book was much more of a direct comparison to somebody like Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. And that's the thing. Remember, Jaren in his 1 year at Michigan State did work on developing a post game, and he made progress, and he's obviously gotten better as he's gone into the NBA. But that Book was a comparison for him. Taylor, I only mentioned Jaren Jackson as a comparison for Ethan Taylor, just in a very rough way in terms of describing what the potential upside might be overall as a prospect, not a stylistic comparison. I do not expect Ethan Taylor to come in jacking threes. It's not his game, but he's got really nice touch too around the rim. He looks to me like a guy who's going to be a play finisher, which is important. You need that. I mean, we talked about Jax continuing to struggle finishing, right?
Yeah, Cam comes in and Cam Ward. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love about Cam Ward is he finishes. Well, I think Ethan Taylor has got the look of a guy who's a play finisher. But it'll be around the rim. It's not going to be away from the basket.
Well, and we always talk too, like, Booker, well, these big guys, they need to, that sort of the light has to turn on. They have to sort of figure out how
Yeah.
hard they have to play, because in many ways, when you're that tall and that dominant, just from a physical standpoint, the game is easier for you offensively, certainly, and even defensively. And you don't have to, not that you don't develop bad habits, but maybe you don't have developed the habits you should have, because now suddenly you're going against super high level athletes, people who are more size. And so you can't just camp out on the post and just score easily over a guy who's you've got like 7 inches on. And so now you just have to have all those things you should have been developing. And with Booker, it was more an effort issue. And there was actually questions even coming in, like, is he going to be a guy who's going to play hard enough?
Yeah.
Is that something that we have to be concerned with Taylor, or is that sort of not even a concern by most people right now?
I think he's like a lot of big kids. I think that he's going to have an adjustment in terms of learning how hard he has to play at MSU. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't get the sense that there is as large a question in that area as was hanging over somebody like Xavier Booker. So I do think there's a distinction there.
And I'll never forget
the two very different players.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Really,
I think there's
the board, they're different.
An interview with Jaren Jackson where he's talking about, he said, I thought I knew how hard I could run.
Right.
Until he got first practice with this.
And Jaren never, when you saw him play at Michigan State, I never felt like, well, that kid just doesn't play hard consistently. Like, it was all there. But even him, he had to figure it out. He had to learn, okay, this is what it takes. I remember him saying the guy who just whipped his ass in that drill was Kyle Arns.
Right.
So that's the deal with Michigan State. Like, you learn from the veterans, you learn from the guys that have been through it. So there's going to be an adjustment for Ethan Taylor. But I will say this, when the clips that you can watch him playing in EYBL, what you see, at least what I saw, is a guy who looks to me to be looking to attack. It's not passive stuff. He's trying to get to the rim and throw it down. And so that's a good sign. It's a good early indicator. And look, one of the other things to go back to, well, what can expectations be like next year? One of the things I really like with this Michigan State team is you've got Jeremy Fears, who very clearly is at the controls now. But man, Cam Ward is going to be there every step of the way right next to him going forward. He can't, hard to do as a freshman, but I'm telling you, I have zero doubt that we won't see Cam Ward as a culture establisher and enforcer as we go forward. So the structure for somebody like Ethan Taylor to come in and immediately get told what time it is in terms of the effort level you got to bring, pretty likely that's going to happen from jump.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question about that. Actually, it kind of reminds me too that I think I was watching, and maybe it's an interview with Kondyke and Comparoni talking about a practice they were at. And I don't know, there's of course, the two teams play. The team that loses has to do wind sprints, right?
Yes.
When they're just in practice.
Yes.
And that Ward and Scott just decided they're going to race each other back and forth down the court during the wind sprints. And so, I think that just gives you an idea of the mentality, the culture at Michigan State, where it's just, everything's competitive. Obviously you're bringing in athletes, so they should be competitive people. But the fact that like everything becomes sort of
not a guarantee.
You're right. It's not.
I think Michigan State does a very good job of identifying guys they think will fit within the culture. I think where occasionally mistakes can happen, and Booker might be an example of this, is guys that are good people that they identify that way and say, this is a good kid. This is a guy who says all the right things, and he's not a bad actor. He's got a good personality, all those things. And I think they can get seduced sometimes. This is just, I'm shooting out of my ass on this, but I do think they can sometimes get seduced by that a bit if the potential otherwise is there, and then find out, well, that like with Book, I just don't think he ever really got it fully. Doesn't make him a bad person at all. It's just not the right personality fit. You want those guys that are going to do the things that Ward and Scott did that you just described, And sometimes that's the thing. I love having guys that are easy to root for. And Michigan State's had a ton of them over the years. But, let's put it this way. You think there's any other fan base in the Big Ten that's going to embrace Jeremy Fears going forward? I don't. I think they're going to hate him. They're going
No
to
question.
absolutely hate him. And that's good.
Yeah.
You need some
Right.
guys like that.
Yeah. And I actually, Keith Turnbull just commented that, he thinks Andre Hudson is the best big man Izzo's ever had. He said, period.
I
And
think if you're looking at the totality of a career,
it's probably true.
Hard to argue with that. He
guy
won
won some.
more than anybody else. Andre Hudson doesn't know what it's like to have not won a Big Ten title. He and Charlie Bell are the only guys. They won 4.
Yeah.
4 Big Ten championships. They went to 3 Final Fours. And then their freshman year, merely a Sweet 16. and Andre Hudson was a huge part. He was a starter for all 4 of those teams. I mean, look, obviously he didn't play in the NBA. Some other guys have. But if you're talking about college production, I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah. Well, this isn't a Detroit Pistons podcast, right? We focus on Michigan State sports. So
right.
Basketball. All right. Well, I guess we'll probably get out of here. That was
I did want to
go ahead.
touch on one more thing. I think we should probably talk about where
what's next?
So the other recruit that had an MSU offer and had MSU in his finalist, Maximo Adams, announced today, and I don't even know if he did a ceremony. I believe 24/7 had the announcement, but he committed to North Carolina, which has been kind of known more or less definitively for several days, maybe a week. It's unfortunate because I really liked his game. He was arguably as productive as any player in the country in EYBL, and it looked like Michigan State made a really nice impact on him, and they were in it. It's generally accepted the final 3 were Carolina, Texas, and MSU. So MSU either finished second or third, doesn't matter. It's all tied for last. If you don't win, I would say this though. The things, even though I thought he would probably slot in as more of a 3-man at MSU, just looking at the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And this might not correlate directly, but I think you'll see where I'm going. Seeing what we've already seen out of Cam Ward, and also knowing that Caleb Glenn is coming next year, and who knows, you might have Cohen Carr back, I'm less concerned. Maximo Adams is a great player, and I think he's going to do really good things at North Carolina. Would have loved to have had him be part of the class. But Ward's emerged, because that's the way I saw Max Adams was, even though he's kind of would slot more as a 3 at MSU, he was an ass kicker in EYBL. He was a physical presence. He was a big time rebounder. He was bringing those types of things. And he also shoots threes very well, which Cam doesn't do at this point. But I think, the way I'm projecting, thinking about that team next year, what it could look like, Cam's emergence is not just, it's a freshman with good potential, but it's a guy who's doing things now, right now. I'm a little, my not concern's the wrong word. My regret at not landing Maximo Adams is slightly mitigated by that. Still would have loved to have had him, but wasn't in the cards. So I think this is it for the MSU recruiting class. And, they're going to be a contender for the number 1 spot. They might not finish there. Kind of depends what happens. There are a lot of guys waiting until the spring, some high-level guys I've seen. So it might not get fully sorted out until the spring. Of course, people don't pay as much attention as they used to that anyway, because the portal
transfers.
Yeah. But for the kind of program Tom Izzo wants to have, this is a day to celebrate, because you've landed, I think, pretty definitively his best recruiting class since at least 2016. The Bridges, Ward, Langford, Winston group. If these guys could have the career impact that class had, wow. I mean, you would take that and run, right?
Yeah,
When you
for
think
sure.
about what those guys did collectively. But I think this group really has a chance to do those kinds of things. All four of them, to me, look like guys who should be impact players in their careers at MSU. Might come earlier for some than others. You look at Carlos Medlock. I think he's very talented, so he might force the issue, but he doesn't have an easy path to a starting role as a freshman.
Correct. Right.
Josiah Jervis might.
Yeah.
Avant might not.
Right.
Taylor may.
Mhm.
But as a group, I think this is a really, really good one. I don't expect them to recruit any other high school players. So at this stage, really all that's left is what we were discussing a while ago. Do they get active in the portal? And that just remains to be seen. I mean, we're not going to know until we hit March or April and we see if anybody's leaving unexpectedly.
Mhm.
But right now, I would say the one spot that to me looks like it might need some shoring up is the center spot. Is
Yeah.
adding one more big. Doesn't have to be a star. If you can get an impact guy, great. But I don't know that I believe they would aim that way. But just adding somebody who brings some experience to the table, that might be advisable. And then the other spot, at least again, as I'm looking at it right now, maybe you could see them looking to add somebody on the perimeter, a 2-guard type. But a lot of that depends. There's a lot of factors. Where's Jordan Scott in the equation?
Yeah.
Is Cohen Carr back? How good does Caleb Glenn look? It's not even just the 2. It's what happens at the 3 and what dominoes might fall from that. Or Divine Ugachukwu continue to make progress. So there's a lot to be sorted out. But right now, with what we know, those would be the 2 spots that I could conceivably see Michigan State thinking about adding somebody next spring. But that it's not going to be another high school player.
Right. Yeah, you think if you're going to bring in a shooter from the perimeter, you're bringing someone who's a proven shooter, sort of like they got this year with
somebody
Glenn
to pair,
and
right?
Ford.
A Trey Fort,
Yeah.
somebody to pair with Josiah Jervis. Now, it also matters. I didn't mention. I should have. Where's Kurt Tang 3-4 months from now? If Kurt Tang has made progress, he and Jervis may be enough. They may feel comfortable with that. That's entirely possible. So, well, I mean, I expect Josiah Jervis is going to play a major role next year. He's the guy out of everybody, maybe even more than Taylor, that I think I could see the clearest path to a major role and maybe even a starter as a freshman. But we'll see. It all gets sorted out.
Yeah, and that all really just takes to the end of the season until you know any of those, most of those
Exactly.
answers.
We're nowhere near being able to answer those questions right now.
Yeah. And if you're a Michigan State fan, you're like, oh, I'd love to have Cohen Carr back, but what if Cohen Carr becomes like a consensus, lottery pick or something? Well, that means he's had a really good season, developed a lot.
Right.
And Michigan State's gone a long ways, right? Just like last year, we said if there's some players go to the NBA, well, Jace Richardson, right? Had it not been for Jace, they wouldn't have gone as far as they did, but that made it a great season. It was a lot of fun because of that. So
exactly.
They all come with their costs, I guess you could say. But that's at this point,
upsides and downsides to everything.
Yep. Izzo is struggling. He's kind of just managed to just kind of tread water here with his recruiting class.
Yeah.
So I do think I think the portal in some ways, as much as it's changed the game and it has helped him, because there's less competition for these players, these high school recruits, right? I just don't think there's quite as many people going after them as hard because they're going to Europe and other places.
I think there's some truth to that. Here's the thing, though. What I would say is there was serious competition for all of these guys, save maybe Medlock, because Medlock's thing, he made his decision so quickly after his rise. After he got high major offers, Michigan offered him. And there were some others. I think Minnesota might have gotten in. There were a handful of high major offers, but he shut that thing down so quickly. That never got a chance to really go. So he might be the one exception. But you look at these other guys. I mean, with Avon, Michigan State was battling with his dad's alma mater. That was not
Right.
easy.
Right. Yeah.
Taylor, Kansas, Oregon, Oklahoma, reportedly there were massive NIL offers on the table for both Taylor and Jervis. And Jervis, North Carolina State was in that mix. So there were, but I think in a general sense you're probably right but it's not so much about the individual recruitments, but rather just that you're not going to have as many schools going hard after high school players in totality.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Right.
it maybe does make it a little easier. I mean, I don't know, but I don't really care. What I care about is that they've got these guys committed, and they look like they can all contribute to many, many more Michigan State victories, which is ultimately what we should all care about. And look,
Absolutely.
Tom Izzo's going to continue to do it his way, man. This year is proof of that. If you needed it still, to sign a 4-man class, not a lot of peer programs that are doing that sign a 4-man high school class these days.
And I would hope, I know it's sort of a hope with no chance of actually coming to fruition, but the fact that people stop talking about Michigan State's lack of resources, Tom Izzo's being cheap, he's not able to spend. You're not getting these players if you're not spending enough money to get them.
That's
Now,
right.
we've talked
That's
before that he may not be spending as much money, let's say, as Oregon was offering, or Kansas or whoever. The key is that he's spending enough to get them, and then the other intangibles have a value too, right, to these players. And so that's the key. Is it's not like that he is missing out on players. And I guess with the NIL, and that's maybe one thing too with NIL, is it has freed him from being at a disadvantage from a lot of other programs.
Absolutely
so
right.
Now he can compete where he wasn't able to compete before. Hey, I'll get you a scholarship, and someone's like, here's a new car and a house for your parents, and you're like, well, I have to make a decision for my family or whatever. And now he's not facing that uphill sort of climb all the time.
Yep, absolutely. But the other thing too is that I look at the kind of guys he's adding, and the two classes before this one, to get a Jeremy Fears, not everybody worked out, but to get a Jeremy Fears and a Cohen Carr. I mean, Jeremy Fears you might have to go back to Draymond Green, Travis Walton to find a personality like anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Now you look at Cam Ward and Jordan Scott and the way they're setting the tone early in their careers. I think we're going to see this class. I think you're going to feel good about the attitudes that all four of these guys bring in. So, yeah, it's pretty impressive. In some ways, it feels to me kind of the way, if you remember, Michigan State had just a little bit of a slide. That group that ended up being the core of the 05 Final Four team, and then some of those guys were there a year after that. Extremely talented. Tom Izzo was able to, he was fortunate in that the upper Midwest and Michigan specifically had a lot of great talent in those classes and those cycles. But the fact that he was winning the way he was winning also put him in position to kind of clean up. And that 04-05 team, just in terms of raw horsepower from a talent perspective, might have been as good as certainly as good offensively as any group he had. But it did lack that ass kicker, that Mateen Cleaves, that Antonio Smith kind of grit. And it took him a couple years, but he got Travis Walton first, and then he got Draymond Green, and he had other guys, Raymar Morgan, guys like that. But those two, Travis Walton and Draymond Green, kind of reestablished the template for what Michigan State basketball is from that perspective. And it kind of is feeling to me like that's happening again.
Yep, I agree.
And it needed it. That's not to denigrate guys who were here the last 4 or 5 years. For the most part, good kids. They had some good moments. They won a lot of games, all of that. But it just kind of felt like it needed another reset. And I think they've got the guys now to do that.
I totally agree, 100%. Well, it doesn't slow down for the season though. Although this is a slight little recruiting update break, and it probably is our last one. I assume this is the
Yep.
most breaking news we've ever done. We were like, we were within half an hour. I think we went live with the
Yep.
from the announcement.
It
That
all
is
worked
not
out.
something that we were ready for this one. I guess is the answer, and it worked out well for our timing. So we are, of course, Kentucky's coming up next, so we got some real basketball playing because we got to talk about this season as well. So the Kentucky preview will be out later tomorrow night, so Saturday evening, and then Rod and I are jumping on the plane. We're going to head out and watch the boys in person. I get to visit New York for the first time, and then I'll get back. I'll have some, I don't know, we're going to do dumplings or something, some pizza. I don't know what do you eat in New York?
I get to do a lot of things I don't typically do when I'm in New York. So.
Right. You got family there. So for you, it's like when I go to Vegas, I see family. I go maybe go to the strip once, but I'm pretty much just doing,
right.
Hanging out in like
it's going to be a different kind of
one
day at least is going to be Tuesday is going to be a different kind of day.
Absolutely.
But I'm looking
All right.
forward
So we have me as well, especially now that the strike is over. So I actually get the airplanes are going to run. So we're going to get out of here. And so quick reminder, of course, that Kentucky will be live after the Kentucky game as well. Whenever that might be. I don't know. We're going to stick around for the Kansas game and stuff. But so until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.